Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for joining us for UNLV Arts Worldwide.
UNLV Arts Worldwide.
UNLV Arts. UNLV Arts.
UNLV Arts.
UNLV Arts Worldwide, made possible by the Stu and Harriet Lipoff Technology Fund.
This episode features several tributes and fond memories shared by UNLV faculty and staff who were touched and inspired by singer Mary Wilson.
If you could have found out what that rosebud meant, I bet that would have explained everything.
No, I don't think so. No. Mr. Kane was a man who got everything he wanted and then lost it. Maybe Rosebud was something he couldn't get or something he lost. Anyway, it wouldn't have explained anything. I don't think any word can explain a man's life.
When someone famous or special to us because we knew and loved them passes away, we search for meaning. Who are we when we live, and who are we when we're gone? In 1941, Citizen Kane famously plumbed the depths of human character. Charles Foster Kane, a man who spends nearly his entire life as a public figure, utters one word when he dies, Rosebud, and a reporter is sent on a mission to discover whether its meaning can deliver a profound insight into who Kane was. Ultimately, the reporter declares that a single word can't sum up a man's life. But the film equivocates by offering viewers the tantalizing hope that perhaps it can. In a classic crane shot that unfolds after the reporters depart, we learn that Rosebud is Kane's beloved childhood sled. We yearn to understand and connect with those whose talent, creativity, and courage have charmed, entertained, enlightened, and inspired us. Finding one word that explains a person's life, a single word that can be evocative of a decades-long journey involving complex and competing forces, is perhaps an impossible proposition, and yet it is tempting to try. For Mary Wilson, a founding member of the Supremes, one of the most successful female musical groups of all time, that single word may be Dream Girl. Like the fictional Charles Foster Kane, Mary Wilson spent nearly her entire life as a public figure. Born in Mississippi in 1944, as a toddler, Wilson was sent to live with extended family in Detroit, Michigan, and by age 12 had settled with her parents in the Brewster Douglass housing projects, created to provide safe, affordable accommodations during a time in which the Motor City was a rapidly expanding industrial powerhouse, drawing workers from across the country. The Big Three, General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler, accounted for more than 90% of automobile sales globally in the late 1950s. It was at the Brewster Projects that Wilson met Florence Ballard, Diana Ross, and Betty McGlown. Even though Brewster was rough, Wilson later said, it was still very wonderful. Music was everywhere in the air. The four teens resolved to form a singing group and called themselves the Primettes. McGlown departed the group when she got married in 1960. To get the attention of Berry Gordy, who founded the now famous Motown record label in 1959, the Primettes hung out at Motown's Hitsville, USA recording studio after school. Gordy signed them as the Supremes in 1961, and after they began working with the songwriting and producing team of Brian Holland, Lamont Dozier, and Eddie Holland, they achieved stunning success within 4 years.
The Supremes!
According to Tim Jones, who teaches the history of rock in the College of Fine Arts at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, quote, the Supremes became the benchmark for Motown artists. They were the biggest selling group on the Motown label in the 1960s and the third biggest selling musical group in the whole world after the Beatles and Elvis, end quote. The statistics are almost unbelievable. The Supremes had 12 #1 songs on the Billboard chart, including Where Did Our Love Go?, Stop in the Name of Love, Baby Love, You Can't Hurry Love, You Keep Me Hanging On, and I Hear a Symphony, which Wilson later named as her favorite.
Whenever you're near, I hear a symphony. How tender
and they achieved their extraordinary popularity during a time of social and political upheaval, especially around the issue of racial equality. Even as tension and violence divided the nation, fans everywhere of all colors flocked to the Supremes. According to author Dolores Barkley, who has researched the group's history, they consistently broke down racial barriers. Quote, "It was a different type of disruption. It was non-confrontational. It was having a platform and saying, yes, we're here, we're great, and we're a part of American music," end quote. Wilson herself said in a 2000 interview with ABC, quote, "We were three little black girls from Detroit, Michigan, who dared to dream in 1959, when black people were not even considered citizens. We helped change that, and that's not a small feat. I was a part of that," end quote. But life as a Supreme, as an American and international icon, was not without its difficulties. Dream girl is a word that signifies both the promise and the irony of Mary Wilson's trajectory. In addition to being the title of a 1981 Broadway musical about a fictional group based on the Supremes, the Dream Girls, and a 2006 film of the same name, Wilson used the term in the title of her first memoir, the best-selling Dream Girl: My Life as a Supreme, first published in 1986. Wilson, Diana Ross, and Florence Ballard pursued their youthful dreams and broke barriers, but they were also vulnerable and closely managed. In their early days at Motown, along with other artists, they attended a finishing school run by Maxine Powell, who sought to refine and polish musicians that came from humble beginnings. The goal was cultivating appeal for mainstream middle and upper-class audiences. When Wilson was interviewed by host Ed Gordon for the television program Detroit Black Journal in 1986, he pointed out that the Supremes' songs did better on the pop chart than on the rhythm and blues chart. "People would say that we sold out," she told him, "that we started singing white music, but that wasn't true. We were not elated that we were not considered R&B. It just seemed that our sound was not soulful enough. But it actually worked to our advantage because we crossed over and ended up becoming known as a pop act." Dream girl Mary Wilson also had the naivete of youth, especially during those early years. Motown, headed by Berry Gordy, was like a family to her. Quote, "We were told by Mr. Gordy, don't worry, you don't need lawyers because we'll take care of everything. We were with black people at a black company. We felt very safe," end quote. But the girls took home only a tiny fraction of the revenue from gold records that sold tens of millions of copies. And the group faced disruption and change. In 1967, Gordy renamed them Diana Ross and the Supremes, and in 1970, Ross departed to pursue a solo career. But Mary Wilson kept the Supremes intact through 1977, and they continued to produce top singles, some with Wilson as lead vocalist, such as Floyjoy and Automatically Sunshine. In 1988, the Supremes were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Baby, let's take life's highway. It's automatically yours and my way. No road is too rough to travel. We'll walk barefoot on life's gravel.
Along the way, Wilson married, had 3 children, and settled in Las Vegas, where she made friends with many entertainers, was a regular performer at casinos and resorts, and a strong supporter of the community, always ready to share her expertise with young people. In 2008, she delighted students and Professor Tim Jones when she was a guest in his History of Rock class at UNLV. In 2018, she attended the UNLV College of Fine Arts Hall of Fame ceremony to celebrate inductee Claudette Robinson, a dear friend and fellow musician. Dean Nancy Uscher was honored to have the Supremes legend on campus and paid tribute to Wilson after she passed away in her Las Vegas Valley home on February 8, 2021. Quote, "We all mourn the loss of Mary Wilson, whose work will continue to be celebrated as an enduring contribution to the arts and entertainment." End quote. Musical legend and friend Gladys Knight also released a statement, quote, "Mary was my girl. She was soft-hearted and loving and always trying to make it work regardless of anything that was happening personally. She was amazing. And when the Supremes' voices came together, she helped them blend. She was always kind and knew her own strength vocally and personally, and she brought something wonderful to the group." End quote. My name is Heather Addison, and I'm the chair of the Department of Film at UNLV. What I share with Mary Wilson is that I was born in Detroit and eventually also relocated to Las Vegas. Sister cities, in a way. Scholars have called Las Vegas the new Detroit. Both have been dynamic hubs of economic opportunity for citizens without a formal education, engines for a rising middle class, and both have produced extraordinary change-makers who have altered the course of human history. This episode of Arts Worldwide is dedicated to you, Ms. Wilson. You had your dreams, and we also invested you with our own. One word can't sum up a woman's life, but now and forever for your extraordinary imagination, dedication, and vision in Detroit, the Motor City, and in Las Vegas, the entertainment capital of the world, you will be enshrined as our Dream Girl. UNLV and the College of Fine Arts salute you.
So do your thing and always know where you go, I'm gon' follow. Hey, don't you worry when you're straight back. Home you hurry and then you'll pay back. All the courage my love can give. All our lives long as we live.
Greetings to our audience. I would like to take a few moments right now to pay tribute to a friend of the College of Fine Arts at UNLV that we lost recently. Mary Wilson was a legend, a member of the Supremes, and a very committed member of the era we call Motown. I had the great pleasure to meet Mary when she attended a few years ago a celebration we had for her dear friend Claudette Robinson, who was also a member of that era. And Claudette was being inducted into our College of Fine Arts Hall of Fame. And Mary came to celebrate her dearest friend. And I remember Mary walking up and down our corridors near the ballroom in the Student Union where we had the event, saying, "This is the first lady of Motown," because Claudette was in one of the very first groups that got together with her then husband or soon to be husband, Smokey Robinson. And she was the first woman in one of those groups. And I remember the warmth that Mary showed her dearest friend. It was a privilege to meet Mary Wilson. The bonds of the people who were legends from that era were so strong. They were like family. I always remembered the generous spirit that Mary shared that evening with us. And then I had the good fortune several months later to go to an event in Los Angeles called Heroes and Legends. It was a group that was raising money for scholarship money for students from underserved communities. And again, I saw Mary's generosity of spirit. She was there to share her largesse with young students who could benefit from financing their educations. And my impression was that Mary was a great person, a great woman, a great artist, and we will miss her. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Timothy Jones, and I am the coordinator for the History of Rock and Roll course here at UNLV. I've been teaching this class for about 18 years. I do a number of things that I perform on the Strip when the Strip is open, and all kinds of wonderful things. And one of the great experiences that I had, and this is going back a few years, in 2008, I was fortunate to play percussion for Mary Wilson of the Supremes, and she sadly passed just recently, earlier on in February. The experience performing with her, of course, was fantastic in and of itself, but the thing that really struck me during that time was that she interacted with the musicians like a lot of stars of her caliber might not normally do. And she spent time in the rehearsal breaks and the breaks in the shows, hanging with the musicians, asking us what we did and what we liked to do, and getting to know us on a personal level, which I thought was very special and meaningful. Through those conversations, she learned that I taught at UNLV, and I taught percussion, and I taught this History of Rock course. And she asked what areas of history of rock, and did we go all the way back, and did we honor those people who really created this form of music? And of course we do. And one of the areas that we highlight is Motown. And so we got talking about that. She said, you know what, I'd like to visit your class sometime and talk to the students and give them the real story of Motown. And you know, when you're on a gig or a show, a lot of things can be said like that, and you think that was nice in the moment, but is it really going to happen? And it did. Following up with her assistant a week or so later, I reached out and said, would you still be interested in coming to a class? And they wrote back immediately and said, we would love to. When can we come in? Next week would be great. And so that happened, and Mary Wilson came to my History of Rock class, and the room was packed because I let everybody know that we would have a special guest. And she came to the class, and she was prepared with a PowerPoint, with musical examples, with video footage. She'd brought in special photos from her own collection to share with the students so they could see some of her history. And she got up in front of the class and basically did a show. This was almost a choreographed show, walking through her history with Motown, with the people that she was working with, from the administration to the engineers to the Funk Brothers being the band with Motown, and also with her colleagues in the Supremes. So she walked us through how the dance moves worked. She demonstrated those things, how the dance movements were choreographed to the lyrics and the meaning of the various steps, and how those were in tune with the entire performance. This was not just something flashy to bring the audience in. It was really connected in a meaningful, artistic way. She shared how the songs came about. She shared how the group had got together in high school, and they were high school friends. They lived in close proximity to one another, and when they were signed by Berry Gordy, they worked very hard. He encouraged them to finish high school. In fact, he wouldn't release any records of them till they had their high school diplomas. He had high expectations for them as people, as well as being performers. Mary, in her class, connected with the students and invited the students to talk with her after the class to share their stories, share their aspirations of where they might like to go. Being a music elective course, not everybody was a musician, but the fact that Mary talked about how to engage an audience, how to use PR to your advantage, how to choreograph your way through a presentation, how to speak articulately, and how to conduct yourself whenever you are in a performance situation, which is any time that people are looking at you and you are presenting to them. So for people that would be future public speakers or theater people or opera singers, musicians, dancers, they all got something out of that class. And it was really touching that she was so personable and just wanted to connect with everybody. She didn't come in to make money. She came in because she wanted to share her art. And I think that that's something that we often see in true artists. There are plenty of people in this world that want to be artists, people that want to share a gift that they have, but there's very few people that are compelled to do the art that they are gifted with. And I really believe Mary Wilson was one of those people. She loved to share her music, and that's what got her excited. I didn't imagine that she would remember me from anything from after 2008, but when she attended the Hall of Fame event for the Dean back in 2018, I went up and said hi to her again. She said, "Oh, the Australian guy, you played on my show. I came to your class. That was so much fun." So it's really special when people remember you like that, especially when so many people must cross their paths every day. So I think in closing, she was a really special person, musically gifted. She wanted to share her love of music and art, and I think she really connected with people on a very meaningful level.
Love don't come easy. It's a game of give and take.
I'm Dave Loeb, Director of the Division of Jazz and Commercial Music at UNLV, and I just wanted to share my thoughts about a friend of ours, Mary Wilson, who is one of the original founding members of the Supremes, the wonderful Motown group that, of course, had countless hits through the years. The story goes that she actually moved across the street and was renting a house while her other home up in Anthem Country Club was being leased. And she lived across the street for several months. We became very good friends. She was the type of woman that would make you feel like you were her very best friend. I'm sure she did that for millions of other people around the world. She was an integral part of Motown in Detroit, and we have exchanged many, many wonderful stories. She gave us a copy of her book, Dream Girl, not Dream Girls, and that has to do with the story of the Supremes. It was a Broadway show that actually depicted the whole story of how the Supremes began their career from Detroit. She was a big part of that. And very interesting book, kind of talking about the entire story and her relation with Diana Ross, business-wise and so forth, but her personal story. And we got to learn a lot about her during that time. She's just a wonderful, incredibly talented performing artist. And she had developed quite a career after she left the Supremes, after they kind of split up and Diana Ross went on her own and established her own solo career after leaving the Supremes, that were produced and really marketed by Berry Gordy, who was the creator of Motown Records. And Motown, of course, was named after Detroit, Michigan, the Motor City. But Mary told me so many wonderful stories. I started to talk to her, and being a pianist and a musician, I was intrigued with how the recording process went, and also some of the musicians that had played on those recordings. And I asked her about the well-known bass player James Jamerson. Now, James was a little bit of a character, and sometimes would come into the recording studio actually with a cigar. And they allowed him to do it, which is beyond comprehension. But it was in the basement of a home, of a residential home in an area of Detroit. There's a museum there now called Hitsville. But at any rate, James Jamerson would come in sometimes, because I guess it was a way of allaying his nervousness, and he would start smoking a cigar during a recording of maybe Baby Love or one of their Supremes hit songs. They were in the same room, separated from the rhythm section, that's piano, bass, drums, guitar, and they were over a little further away, but they would watch James Jamerson's cigar, and if those ashes came out, there was one recording, I can't remember the name of the song, but the ashes fell and they had to start the entire track from the very beginning, because they didn't have the technology we have today where you could literally punch in and you could record that segment of the song that wasn't perfect later on after it had been done. They had to start the entire recording all over again, and everybody had to sing their parts. Diana Ross and the Supremes and the musicians had to perform it. That was one of the stories she told us. But she was just a lovely, lovely, lovely woman. Had some personal tragedies in her life, with her son being killed in an accident when they were driving back from LA when she had moved to Las Vegas, when a Jeep overturned, and some other things. But she was just a wonderful woman, loved her family, and just a real amazing spirit.
You're just too good to be true. Can't take my eyes off of you. You'd be like heaven to touch, and I wanna hold you so much. At long last, love has arrived, and I thank God I'm alive. You're just too good to be true. I can't take my eyes off of you. Pardon the way that I stare, there's nothing else to compare. The sight of you leaves me weak. Oh,
there are no words left to speak. But if you feel like I feel, please let me know that it's real. You're just too good to be true. Can't take my eyes off of you.